All right, boys. So, before we jump into the main portion of the course and learn our methods to succeed with dropshipping, I want to first go over some mindset and protocol stuff to help you stay focused and disciplined throughout learning this course and growing your business. All right, so this one is going to be a long one, so please sit and be patient with me. We're going into some topics that I can promise you definitely didn't expect to be learning in a dropshipping course, and it might seem a little bit off track, but I promise you guys, this is going to be one of the most powerful videos in the course. And this is going to be something that, if you really put your all in it, is going to be the detrimental factor, the keystone to your success through this program. That's something I truly believe. So without further explanation, let's jump into it. We will be taking full control, aligning our actions, emotions, beliefs, and identity together towards our goal for massive success. We're going to be accomplishing all of this through one little chemical in our brain, and that is dopamine. So what is dopamine? You've probably heard about it before, but don't really understand the full extent of it. Dopamine is essentially a navigational chemical in our brain. Dopamine is designed with one single purpose in mind: to help you navigate and take certain actions and go towards certain directions in life. Dopamine essentially programs your subconscious mind and primes it towards what actions you should take. It does this through awarding certain actions with large spikes of dopamine, and the feeling of dopamine, and hitting a large spike of dopamine is essentially feeling a large sense of pleasure and fulfillment. This process is essential to nature in ensuring that the action of an individual aligns with the best actions to take for the further evolution of the species. Here is an example. A fox is hungry, so it searches for food. After hours of hunting, it kills a rabbit. As it's eating the rabbit, the brain rewards it with a huge spike of dopamine. Another example, there's a male fox attracted to a female fox. They mate, and their brain rewards both of them with large spikes of dopamine. The reason I brought that up is because food and sex are the primary example of a natural dopamine release. The brain releases this chemical as it realizes that this action further evolves the species as a whole. Through rewarding the animal with this large dopamine spike, the subconscious conscious realizes that if it keeps doing these actions, it will keep getting those dopamine spikes. Since animals obviously have lower levels of consciousness than us, it's very important that dopamine can be released to help them navigate which decisions to take throughout life. But the most important part is it's getting the animal to repeatedly take these actions. Usually any task that rewards a large amount of dopamine is a pretty challenging and hard task to achieve or accomplish. That is why the brain provides this huge spike of dopamine. It essentially acts as a motivation for the animal to do hard tasks, knowing that it's going to get that dopamine spike at the end. The brain provides this dopamine spike as basically a huge chemical form of motivation that ultimately allows the animal to accomplish impossible tasks. It will go through physical pain, hunt for hours, and do anything it takes to get that dopamine hit. Ultimately, tasks that it probably wouldn't do if it wasn't subconsciously programmed to understand that the dopamine reward will be at the end. And since humans are glorified animals, we have the same process ingrained in us, and honestly, we would not have the reality we know today if nature didn't somehow create this process. Over the years, as humanity started to evolve, scientists started understanding dopamine and really doing research on how this process works. Scientists began hooking up devices to rats' brains that would stimulate their dopamine receptor if they took a specific action. Essentially, they created a little button, and anytime the rat would go over and push it, it would get a huge spike of dopamine. To their surprise, the rat became completely obsessed with hitting that button. It would ignore its food, it wouldn't drink water, it would go through electrical currents, it would walk over painful objects just to hit the dopamine button. There was almost nothing they could do to stop this rat from running towards the button and hitting it. And of course, through the years, corporations got their hands on this information and began creating products and services geared solely towards stimulating our dopamine receptors. And over the years, eventually being able to create nearly perfect dopamine releasing systems. TikTok is probably the best example of this. Truthfully, The algorithm that runs TikTok will go down in human history as the most powerful and effective dopamine releasing system humanity has created so far. Essentially, every business you can name utilizes this information to get you coming back to their products and services over and over and over again. Just like the rat sacrificing your future success, your money, your time, your freedom, sacrificing relationships, and basically anything just to get your hit of dopamine. With porn, fast food, drugs, video game, social media, movies, TV shows, the list basically goes on forever. You see, dopamine was designed to be released after accomplishing a huge, challenging task like hunting or finding a mate. Now, you can simply get huge dopamine spikes by reaching in your pocket and grabbing your phone. This is ultimately what allowed our species to evolve into a fat, lazy, confused, unsatisfied mess we're in today. And essentially, we're programmed into this kind of dopamine slavery at a very young age, basically through our unconscious parents who string us along into all these unhealthy behaviors that are basically just social norms. At this point, think of what you would do as a child before going to school. You'd probably eat your sugary, horrible breakfast of like Ego waffles or cereal, and you're probably watching cartoons the same time you were eating that breakfast. From a young age, our dopamine receptors are rewarded for behaviors that take zero effort. As this kid is eating his sugary, filled breakfast, he's getting hit with a huge spike of dopamine. That's because sugar is hard to find in nature. So when an animal would find it, they would get hit with a huge spike of dopamine. But nowadays, all you have to do is go downstairs, open up some plastic packaging, and get hit with the same amount of dopamine that an animal would get hit with after days of hunting. Plus, meanwhile, this kid's watching cartoons as he eats this sugary food. Meanwhile, the cartoon is programming him with whatever agenda the media company's throwing at him. But also, when you're watching shows, you kind of subconsciously view yourself as the character. So if the character accomplishes something, you get dopamine releases as well. Ultimately, you get the point. It's pretty easy to see that in our modern world, we're almost doomed to live a life of dopamine slavery, trained to succumb to our lowest virtues and values in order to get our dopamine hit. As we grow older, it turns into drug use, porn addiction, and we slowly progress into worse and worse behaviors, searching for the easiest path to dopamine. The more you do these instant gratification-based actions, the less dopamine is rewarded each time, which essentially forces us to walk down this breadcrumb path to hell. And being woken up to information like this is not too fun. It has a pretty dark nature, realizing that our entire society is built off systems like this. To realize that systems like this were consciously created by others, realizing that the true people in power in this world want mindless slaves who are distracted by their own primal urges, who are too dumb to question anything, and ultimately just people who accept reality and will work to just simply survive. But with all that being said, essentially no one is to blame for your reality but yourself. Greed will always take over people. Companies will always optimize for the most profit, and governments will always want mindless citizens, or it creates too much of a problem for them to manage everyone. At the end of the day, you own your own inner mind. No one can take that from you. No company, no system, no government, or any amount of dopamine can take over your inner world and sway you to take actions you don't want to take. Unless you allow your actions, emotions, beliefs, and identity fall into resignation with statements like, I'm addicted to X, I'm not an overachiever, I don't have what it takes, I'm depressed, I've always been like this, I can't change. You see, ultimately, words are spells that create your own reality. The thoughts you think and the words you speak quite literally cast spells around you. Why do you think it's called spelling? Ultimately, this is why I've gone so deep with explaining your inner world, so I could present you with this idea today, and we could ultimately come to this conclusion together. You are the one that's in control of your life. You're simply not limited by anything. Some of you might believe you're depressed. Maybe you've even been diagnosed. Maybe you take medications. Maybe someone told you you have a chemical imbalance in your brain and you're doomed to live a life of depression. All you can do is take mind-numbing medications to hopefully manage it for the rest of your life. and maybe you agreed, maybe you allowed that information to resonate with you, maybe you allowed that statement to creep into your identity. Maybe it took hold of your belief system, maybe it took power over your emotions and started affecting your daily actions. You see, the most powerful way to control someone is through changing their identity. Can you see how just accepting one identity statement ends up with you being fully controlled by it? If you align your identity with something and your beliefs fall in line with that identity, then your emotions are governed by it, and then ultimately changing your daily actions, completely boxing you into the reality of whatever identity statement you resonated with. If you don't want to feel depressed, you simply cannot identify yourself as someone with depression. I think ultimately a lot of people in our society have allowed themselves to resonate with statements that limit themselves, that give out the control that they naturally have as an individual. I think a lot of people in our society have also found victim to millions of different sources of dopamine, becoming completely addicted to them, and pushing that dopamine button has become their only sense of fulfillment in life. Accomplishing nothing, searching for the easy way out, hoping to become rich with minimal effort, subconsciously thinking that true fulfillment can come as easy as all their addictive forms of instant gratification. Everyone is used to receiving fulfillment in a blink of an eye. Everyone has such a low expectation of what it takes to feel real fulfillment and success in life. Let's think about video games. Through a couple minutes or hours of hard work on a video game, you can level up your character, get access to new weapons, rank up, and make tons of money inside the game, reaching all sorts of levels of fulfillment through easy-to-reach dopamine releases that the game developers consciously designed to keep you addicted to their game. The game of life doesn't have these little breadcrumb paths to dopamine that easily allow you to feel dopamine. Dopamine and senses of fulfillment without conscious mental activity. In life, you can put months or years of work into something without a single milligram of dopamine being released, having almost nothing to show for your successes. Life is on a scale 1,000 times larger than these video games, than these TikTok algorithms, sugary food, and porn sites. An animal will hunt for days on end, working their asses off just to simply eat to get their dopamine release. Meanwhile, all we have to do is go through the McDonald's drive-thru, and we're still pissed if we have to wait 5 minutes in line to get our sugary, saturated, empty carb piece of shit meal that releases 10 times the dopamine that the animal would receive through a full day of hunting. So if we want to break free from a lifetime of social programming and dopamine addiction, the best thing we can do is a dopamine detox. Dopamine detoxes are a huge and absolutely essential component for success. If you're living in a reality that even slightly mirrors the one we've been talking about this whole time, then one of the most beneficial things you can do is rewrite your story and recreate yourself on your own terms. So what is a dopamine detox? Dopamine detox is essentially the process of rewriting your brain through reprogramming your dopamine receptors. We do this by cutting out all forms of instant gratification, essentially anything that has the ability to spike your dopamine without requiring a ton of work needs to be completely cut out of your life. Then we replace these old dopamine habits with new real habits that give us a real sense of dopamine. Essentially, if we do this properly, we can only receive dopamine through accomplishing long-form tasks or overcoming large challenges. This will give us a natural, real sense of dopamine and get us away from all this synthetic dopamine bullshit that's produced through these addictive-based systems, products, and services that ultimately turn us into consumption slaves. Basically, there's two people in life. We have consumers, and we have almost everyone in our society is a consumer. They are mindless drifters, modern-day slaves, dopamine addicts with one goal in mind. While on the other hand, we have the path less traveled. We have the producers, people who create things, people who live life intentionally and consciously, people who live in line with their purpose and passion, essentially people who receive dopamine through healthy and real sources, people who receive fulfillment based on their conscious actions and efforts. These are the people we want to become. So here's how we do it. we are going to be cutting out every form of instant gratification we possibly can. Things like video games, porn, junk food, music, social media, movies, TV shows, drugs, alcohol, and replace all these bad habits with new healthy ones that actually give us a real sense of fulfillment and achievement. Things like working out, meditating, eating healthy, working towards a specific goal, something that's on our vision board, actively working towards that, reading, yoga, stretching, or just simply setting out in nature. Through this process, you quite literally reroute all your chemical and neural pathways within your brain and body. By cutting off every form of instant gratification, we naturally can only be rewarded with dopamine through delayed gratification, through actually accomplishing things that get us towards the life we want and the person we want to become. Here's the secret. Dopamine has to be produced. Can't turn off dopamine ever. The only thing you can do is change the direction that dopamine is pointing towards. Remember, I called it the navigational chemical. Dopamine is essentially a compass, and all of your compasses are pointing down the path towards hell. Through instant gratification, meaning you literally don't have to work towards anything in life. Dopamine is simply spawned out of thin air by going through a drive, through, or sitting on your phone. And once everything in life is handed to you, that's when things can begin to turn dark. If you have zero challenges in your outer world, you begin to create challenges in your inner mind. This is because as human beings, we are naturally designed for progress. Dopamine must be released. We must work towards bettering ourselves for the improvement of the entire species. This is why dopamine is here. This is the essential purpose of dopamine. So if we have zero stimulation from our outer world, the mind starts creating problems for you to solve. You start getting faced with challenges and tasks in your inner world just so you can reach levels of dopamine by solving these problems in your inner world. So if there's no stimulation from your outer world, the mind starts creating problems you can solve so you can get your hits of dopamine. You start getting faced with challenges and tasks in your inner world, which is completely unnecessary. You don't need that in your life. Mental issues only manifest when you have zero sense of stimulating work in your outer world. Let me say that again. Mental issues only manifest when you have zero stimulating work in your outer world. Now that statement opens the door to a 6-module course itself and a large list of a ton of other things. But I want to simply leave it at this. Dopamine detox is an essential part of success. You must break the tie from being an unconscious consumer and migrate into the lifestyle of the producer, the creator, the conscious and intentional being. Here is my exact protocol for a full-fledged dopamine detox. You will have to follow this protocol for 1 week with zero exceptions. Here's my protocol. No porn and masturbation, no alcohol or drugs, no breakfast. You must do intermittent fasting, no unhealthy or processed bullshit foods, no mindless entertainment through social media, movies, TV shows, YouTube, none of it. You must work out every single weekday, even if it's just for 30 minutes. You must drink as much water as you can each day. I try to do a gallon every single day. You don't have to do a gallon, but I really advise it. You must meditate for 10 minutes each day. You must journal your thoughts and feelings for 10 minutes each day. And you must read 10 pages a day. You must work towards your desired goal for 2 hours each day. So that would be our drop shipping store. You must get 8 to 9 hours of sleep each day. You must spend 30 minutes outside, even if it's just sitting in grass or going for a mindless walk. This one's a hard one. You can't listen to music the entire week. You also must adapt into cold showers. You can do a normal shower, but you have to turn it to cold at the end of the shower and try to get into taking full cold showers if you can. And lastly, you must have absolutely minimal phone time, no more than 1 to 2 hours a day. And try to keep all of your tasks on your phone and on your computer as organized, conscious activities that are going to progress you to become the person you want to become. Now, I know that protocol is absolutely insane, and for doing that for a full week is honestly one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. Anything you've been avoiding in your life must be addressed at this time. Since you will have a large amount of new free time, since you have no distractions anymore, you have the time to explore yourself, to explore your reality, and to explore the things you've been running from your entire life through distractions. Most of us don't even realize the things we're running from through avoidance, distractions, and instant gratification. So when these things are gone, you essentially see an entirely new side of yourself, your mind, your actions, your reality, everything. It's almost like you gain a new level of consciousness that you've never had before. This is your time to heal, to kill your old self, to solve problems, and actively recreate yourself through conscious and decisive action. We are no longer going to run away from our problems. We are no longer going to hide in instant gratification and mindless distractions. This process is essentially going to shine a light on your soul and on your entire life as a whole, showing you things you didn't realize before, bringing up emotions you forgot in order for you to process them. I promise these 7 days are going to be like anything else you've ever experienced, and it's going to be extremely hard. I followed this protocol last year, this exact one. I even had some more rules on top of it, and truthfully, it was so hard to get through all 7 days. On day 5, I found myself just angry, just frustrated and mad for no reason. So many emotions were rising up from my past, and I was forced to process them. There was nowhere I could run. There was nothing I could do to distract my mind. And ultimately, I saw a new level of reality. I was able to analyze my thoughts and actions and truth, see myself from a third perspective. I promise the value you're going to gain through these 7 days will exceed any expectation you have for the process. The beauty about dopamine detoxes is that you don't have to do this forever. You don't even have to do this for a long time. It's 1 week out of your entire life. You just need to accomplish this hard reset in order to break free from the past and consciously create a meaningful future moving forward. And then you're done. You don't need to follow this protocol forever, because now moving forward into the future, you're going to have this understanding to help you navigate correctly through the actual decisions you want to make. You will no longer fall into unconscious pattern, habits, and actions. But if you do, you can just do a simple dopamine detox again. It is healthy to do these 1 or 2 times a year, just depending on whenever you need it. And if this exact protocol seems too challenging, you can do this for a 3 to 5 day time period, or you can do a full 7-day period with less rules and slowly work your way into doing a full 7-day dopamine detox with my exact protocol. You're welcome to go at your own pace, but I promise you, if you have the courage to jump into the deep end and do the full 7-day protocol, I promise it'll open your eyes in a way you could never imagine. And it's ultimately worth all the pain and struggle of jumping into the deep end. Now, since you have to read 10 pages a day, this is the perfect time to pick up the book, The Kabbalion, as well as the book, The Science of Getting Rich. You need to finish these 2 books before anything. I ultimately have a list of like 30 books I can recommend you guys, but it's extremely important to get to the other books when you're ready for them. Before we end this video, I want to quickly reiterate how powerful this process is. Dopamine is quite literally the most powerful and potent form of motivation that exists on the planet. And I'll show you how through a little example. Think of your consciousness. Think of yourself as a little surfer out in the ocean. Now think of dopamine as a massive wave, essentially an unlimited source of power. Previously, this immense power, this huge wave, was driving us in the wrong direction, forcing us into our comfort zone, and it was directing us toward that path to hell through instant gratification, addiction, and endless consumption. But now that we have changed the direction that this navigational chemical is pointing, we literally have an unlimited source of power behind us to take us absolutely anywhere we want to go in life. All we have to do is ride that wave, choosing the direction we want to travel. This wave will never die. All you have to do is keep riding it. Once you accomplish this dopamine detox, it's important to give yourself a pretty large reward. Like we said in the first video, it's extremely important to celebrate your successes. And this is a huge success, a major win for your long-term growth and self-improvement. Make sure you treat yourself, but you need to be careful. There's only one rule with that. You can't reward yourself with allowing yourself to do negative habits. Here is a perfect example. I just finished my dopamine detox. So now I'm going to watch porn and smoke weed again. This literally just puts you back in the circle of self-sabotage, taking you further away from your dreams and changing that navigational chemical to point back in the direction we just worked so hard to change. You need to reward yourself with things that bring you closer to the person you want to become. We need to think of our future self as a millionaire that's accomplished all of these goals? How would that person reward themselves for tasks they accomplish? They'd probably go buy something nice, go on a very nice vacation, get some new clothes, go to a fancy dinner, help out the people they love, treat yourself to things like this. Even if it might be a little bit hard on the budget, reward yourself by showing yourself what wealth looks like. Live a day in the wealthy man's life. Go to a fancy dinner, get some new clothes, go look at new cars, go look at new houses. Just be in the environment of these things. Reward yourself in ways that will make you feel proud of yourself at the end. Reward yourself with actions that resonate with your new found identity. And lastly, we'll leave you off with our action steps. That's number 1, begin your dopamine detox protocol. Go make a post in the community group with your exact protocol, the amount of days you're doing it, and the exact day you're starting. Once you finish this protocol, come revisit your post and let us know what you learned and what you experienced. Number 2, read The Kabbalion and the Science of Getting Rich. Little tip, I like to order the book on Audible and have a physical copy so I can listen to it as I'm following along. And number 3, get ready to finally jump into Module 2 and start our journey into e-commerce.